Hey, it's Phil with my response for week five's discussion. I wanted to start with just the introduction that's coming out of the cultural theory book. This might be my favorite section because it finally offers me like a real clear thought out definition of something. So mostly talking about ideology and saying that ideology is at once a thought process and sociopolitical mode of identification. I feel like the introductions are great. They offer me some framework on where we're going to enter the conversation, and then we actually start having the conversation, and I get lost in the weeds a little bit. But moving on first to the German ideology from Marx and Engels, one of the biggest things that struck out to me here is that they're presenting two sides of the ideological coin, right? They're offering us an explanation of German philosophy in that ideology descends from heaven. And what Marx is saying is that it actually, their opinion is that it sets out from real active men as they develop ideologies from their life process, so from real world experience. I thought that was an interesting way to frame that. I'm also glad to see that further on in this essay they mention directly language, because that's my proposed keyword that I'm going to be working on, so it's nice to see some of the masters, so to speak, bringing that up. And it also, language shows up again in some of Stuart Hall's writing. But here Marx says that language is as old as consciousness. Language is practical consciousness that exists also for other men, and for that reason alone, it really exists for me personally as well. Language, like consciousness, only arises from the need, the necessity of intercourse with other men. So language is sort of just connected to consciousness, and as there's some relationship there that I think is going to come in useful for furthering that argument. Moving forward, reification in the consciousness of the proletariat. I read through this and I didn't highlight a single thing. It looked to me like this was more like overthinking of existing literature and not necessarily offering anything new. And maybe I was just getting tired through reading through all the fluffiness of these words. So I'd be interested to hear some other arguments from students in class about that one. But didn't actually find anything that I found, that generated a question for me. In the Antonio Gramsci piece on hegemony, the important things that stuck out to me is that all men are intellectuals, and one could therefore say, but not all men have in society the function of intellectuals. So all men are in fact intellectuals. That's just inherent in being human, is what I'm taking from this, but not everyone that is given the gift of intellectualism actually has any sort of use or function of that in their role in society or their civilization. It also says that school is an instrument by which intellectuals are elaborated. Thought that, of course, that makes sense. The more school you have, the more intellectual you can become, but that also raises other questions like, what do we consider a school? With modern technology, if I learn a lot of things on YouTube, am I really becoming more intellectual? The other interesting point here was the definition of, or the designation between urban and rural intellectuals. Urban intellectuals being those that are obviously in more developed areas and are following the evolution of industry, and then traditional or rural intellectuals as they're linked to history and small towns. Okay. Going a little bit further into Louis Althusser, the ideology and ideological state apparatuses. Really the biggest thing that came out of this was his idea, the creation of ideological state apparatuses that offer know-how. So the example here is the church that teaches know-how, that sort of subjects people to the ruling ideology of the church, and that's how mastery of its practice comes about. There's other examples of what those ideological state apparatuses are that I thought I maybe would have skipped over. So public and private schools, political systems and parties, and then the media, press, radio and television, literature and arts. Skipping ahead a little bit to the Stuart Hall piece. Again, just important that he's tying in the idea of language. So tying in the concept of language is an important part of ideology, along with the other concepts as he identifies as screen theory. I'm hoping that we can maybe dive more into screen theory and enlighten me a little bit more about that. And the final piece, the specter of ideology, it's used as a jumping off point for the argument that something is actually nothing. So we come back to this, just this general theme that I think I'm finding that the more questions we ask and the further down the rabbit hole we go, that everything is also nothing. Found it interesting that they used an example of the media's power by not delivering important information about the 1991 Gulf War, and instead of focusing on particular aspects of information that would be relevant to the argument, really just sort of dumbing it down to the evils of war and evil dictatorships and sort of this, this picture that they painted about Saddam Hussein. And that's pretty much where I'm going to leave it. I'm looking forward to diving into some of these topics a little bit further. And I'm also going to be uploading this week's keyword material. So looking forward to a good discussion this week. See you later.